Giants are winning 4-2. I guess you could classify the last winter season as quantity over quality. Last winter, I only watched 2 shows, only one of which I cared for. But this winter, I watched 5, which was actually more shows than I dropped. Most of these shows weren't great, and I'm probably going to forget about them the minute this video uploads. But they're not bad, and I'm going to remember winter 2023 as a season that didn't do a whole lot of great, but did do a whole lot of good. So before we get into those shows, let's talk about the ones that I gave a shot, but ultimately dropped. Tomo-chan is a girl, features our hero Tomo-chan as she tries to make an advance on a boy that only considers her a friend. Because you see, Tomo-chan is a tomboy whose feminine qualities aren't taken seriously by anybody. It's a premise that's right up my alley, but unfortunately the show doesn't really do anything interesting with it, at least in the first episode. It's not gay, it's not clever, it's just kind of male-gazy and unnecessary. Speaking of male-gazy, Kubo-san Won't Let Me Be Invisible features our hero Junta as he tries to make it through high school unseen by anyone. Except there's one pretty girl that sees him and follows him and teases him. Can you try to figure out what her name is? Kubo-san is a very pretty show that knows exactly what it's doing, but it's a little too attuned to male fantasy to be interesting. Which is too bad, because I usually like the stuff that Studio Pine Jam puts out, just not this one. No matter the premise, I will always give a shot to a workplace comedy, and the ice guy and his cool female colleague certainly qualifies. It also has an isekai-ass name, so I shouldn't have been surprised when all the fantasy elements came out of the woodwork. I only watched 1 episode, but I can't imagine who the intended audience for a workplace comedy with weatherbending and fox people would be. It just tries too much and nothing really sticks. And that's it. So let's get to the shows that I actually finished. It makes total sense why Buddy Daddies was Tumblr's anime of the season, and so I felt obligated to finish it. And while elements of it are very good, my biggest takeaway from Buddy Daddies is just how much better Spy Family is. That's not to say that Buddy Daddies isn't good, as it does a lot of things that are immediately cool. For one, the palette of mostly primary colors really fits the tone of the show. I really like both the character and the city design, especially with Kazuki and Rei's apartment. And the music is generally pretty fantastic, with what I consider the best OP of the entire season. But that's all about it that I can say that I unequivocally like, because I think the characters and the pacing and the story are all kind of a mess. Buddy Daddies is about our 2 underworld roommates who suddenly adopt the daughter of a man that they violently assassinate. Along the way, both of them learn the struggles and the values of parenting as they chase around their new 4-year-old daughter Miri, a hyperactive and curious preschooler who adores both of her papas. And here's where I find the easiest comparison to Spy Family, a show that features a cast of 4 main characters. Everyone in Spy Family is instantly likable, but I don't find any of the main characters in Buddy Daddies all that interesting to begin with. Rei and Kazuki are both comical stretches of character tropes. And besides their affection for Miri, neither of them present any character traits that make me sympathetic for their cause. And even though Miri is generally loved by the fandom, I can't stand how annoying she is. I've worked with a lot of 4-year-olds in my life, and no, sorry, most of them are not as hyperactive and annoying as Miri. This is such a frustrating show to watch because of Miri's energy and Kazuki and Rei's parental ineptitude. So much so that even the small victories that they earn throughout the season automatically get drowned out by the secondhand embarrassment that I feel watching them fail. Our heroes in Spy Family are also kind of a mess, but they also are all genuinely giving 100% for each other and for the cause. And I can't say the same thing for Buddy Daddies. It just feels less competent and worthwhile than the show that it's obviously copying. Sorry Tumblr, Buddy Daddies gets a 6 out of 10. Moipon is our cute girls doing judo show, with Michiro in the center as the sunshine that everyone is attracted to. Despite the average production quality, I think Moipon succeeds as a show mainly in bringing out the K-On! Vibes. And much like K-On!, the show isn't really about the thing that the girls are doing, but about the relationships that all of these girls establish amongst one another. Moipon was the show whose success I rooted for most throughout the season, and I think that it's been generally undervalued. This is a no-brainer show to watch for any judo enthusiast, as I think they actually put more effort into the judo parts of the show than they do with any other part. What I also find cool is that the judo itself is rarely explained in depth, as you see girls and coaches just throw out very long names of complicated maneuvers that just don't get explained at all. But honestly, we don't need the elaboration. At least I don't, because I get a lot more out of this show than what we see in the competition scenes. Moipon knocks me over with relentless positivity and the not so subtle gay tropes. And to me, its biggest problem is that it introduces so many cool characters and relationships and ideas and doesn't really have any time to develop them. With a little more production value and space to breathe, I think this show could have been a massive hit. And as it is, Moipon is still a very nice time. I give it a 7 out of 10. What if I told you that there was a show that looked like shit with very traditional values with an overdone high school rom-com concept where 80% of the show takes place in the same room? That's an instant drop, right? I'm still kind of baffled that I enjoyed The Angel Next Door Spoils Me Rotten as much as I did, but it genuinely was the show I looked forward to watching the most every week. And everything I said before still stands. This show looks bad, this show sounds bad, this show is painfully unoriginal. Really, the only thing it has going for it is the chemistry between our two romantic leads, Mahiru and Amane. But their chemistry is A+ fantastic, and it was a solid decision to have like 95% of the dialogue come between these two characters. I think the show very rightly earns its male wish fulfillment label. It's a very horny show. But unlike a lot of other male wish fulfillment shows, it doesn't present Amane as some sort of useless shut-in. He has qualities that other people would find attractive, and it makes sense that he would be the male lead in a romance. There still definitely is a wide gulf between the worthiness of Mahiru and the worthiness of Amane, but it's not inconceivable that these two would find safe harbor in each other's company. All in all, I admire The Angel Next Door for knowing exactly how terrible a show it could have been, and still putting out an enjoyable experience every week. But really, there isn't very much this show does well, so I can't possibly give it anything higher than a 7 out of 10. I guessed last December that Tsurune was going to be the show of the season, and for a few weeks in January and February, I was correct. But Tsurune is also Tsurune, one of Kyoto Animation's least celebrated projects. So it doesn't surprise me that there wasn't much fanfare surrounding the show when it started this season, at least out here. And everything that made Tsurune so uninspiring the first time around is back, with our boring main characters and our dull sport that it focuses on. How exactly was this show going to raise the stakes when it didn't really give us much to latch onto in the first place? To the show's credit, it doesn't have to, at least initially, because it's too busy distracting us with pretty colors and landscapes and characters. I know this is a KyoAni project, so of course the linking shot looks great, but I do think it's worth wondering whether this is the prettiest project Kyoto Animation has ever published. And that would be enough to get it across the finish line in the top spot of any given season, because this is an artistic medium after all. But the linking shot also steps up in a couple of ways, with marginally more impressive side stories and some actually truly impressive competitive scenes. I don't think it's much of a secret that KyoAni knows how to do a competition arc, but if you didn't know that already, then you should go watch Tsurune. Actually, you should go watch Free, because it's a much better show overall, but the last 3 episodes of the linking shot are up there with any episode that Free puts out. I'm not going to go over the stories or the characters, because blech. But if you're a KyoAni fan, then this show comes with an automatic recommendation and a soft recommendation for those who haven't seen a single Kyoto Animation project, assuming your tastes line up with mine. Headline: KyoAni's most boring show gets a little bit better. 8 out of 10. But not the show of the season, as it turns out. When Aggretsuko came out in 2018, its company Sanrio opened up a pop-up shop on the Little Tokyo neighborhood of Los Angeles. This show had lines out the door in its first week and was so popular that it stayed open for years, selling the same Aggretsuko plushies and keychains and posters. And I was very aware of this store because in 2018, I was a 25-year-old office worker in Little Tokyo, passing by this shop on my way to the office every single day. So when I found out that Aggretsuko, the show, was about a 25-year-old downtown office worker going through stress, I put the show on the back burner. And I never felt motivated enough to revisit it through its first 4 seasons, but when the 5th season dropped in February, I decided that this year was now or never. So I binged all 4 seasons before starting the 5th, and I loved all of them. I'm not gonna go over all of the seasons because this isn't that type of video, but in short, I'll say that I found the 3rd season a little silly, but the rest a genuinely heartfelt look at the life of a 20-something office worker. I don't usually binge shows, but I could this time around because I was unemployed. So you can imagine my feelings when I turned on the first episode of the 5th season and found out that the central theme of this show was going to be about unemployment in your late 20s. It's been like 5 years and I can't escape how real this show is to me. The 5th season of Aggretsuko is the first season that doesn't focus on our titular character Retsuko, but her now for sure no doubt life partner Haida. And on the surface, this seems like a risky move. This show isn't called Aggressive Haida after all. But with some context, it's absolutely the correct decision. After 4 seasons, it looks like Retsuko knows what she's good at, knows what she wants in life, and knows who she wants to spend that life with. Basically, her character arc is complete. But Haida's is not, and the first 2 seasons spend time focusing on his negative qualities, mostly his laziness and his low self-esteem. While the 3rd and 4th seasons highlight how people manipulate his positive qualities, mostly his intelligence and his loyalty. Through its first 4 seasons, this show paints Haida as a complicated and a pitiable man, but doesn't really take the time to explain how this all came to be. And after the 5th season, it makes a whole lot of sense now. The most impactful moment of the season, in my opinion, and possibly of the show in its entirety, is when Haida brings Retsuko to meet his family. And this is where Retsuko discovers that Haida's dad and brother, both parts of the Japanese political establishment, have been verbally abusing Haida for his entire life. At dinner, Haida somewhat grows a spine and fights back, but it's made clear that there's nothing he or Retsuko can really say to stem the assault from his dad. And though this is arguably one of the most mundane complications that our heroes face, it's also one of the strongest and most difficult to overcome. Through its first 4 seasons, the show got really good at putting Retsuko through seemingly insurmountable obstacles. And it always made for such a satisfying conclusion to each season when Retsuko eventually overcame them. But what makes this moment so impactful is that Haida's dad's obstinance doesn't seem like an obstacle to be overcome, but just a sad reality of his life. This new development doesn't so much as raise the stakes, but kind of twist the expectations of the viewer. Where the first 4 seasons end up feeling so triumphant, the 5th one brings us back down to earth. And that's okay, because as silly as this show gets with all of Retsuko's political maneuvering after visiting Haida's parents, it doesn't lose its optimistic values. Retsuko and Haida just want to live a quiet life together, and they're willing to fight like hell to make it happen. It's not the overcome all odds messaging we get from the first 4 seasons, but it's something more real and grounded for 20-somethings like myself to take home. And I find that really important because in an age of exploding anime volume, I find that there's less and less for aging demographics like myself to latch onto with each passing season. We may not remember Aggretsuko as a classic years from now, but I'm going to remember it as an extremely competent show with a big heart and an excellent message. And besides a little blip in the 3rd season, Aggretsuko is also a show that got better and better as it aged. This may not be a popular opinion, but I think Aggretsuko's 5th season is its best, and if this is where the showrunners decide to leave it, I think I will be very satisfied with its conclusion. Aggretsuko is real and goes so hard. It gets a 9 out of 10. I'd like to take care of some housekeeping before finishing this video. You may have already noticed that the name of this channel has changed. Yuki Submarine is still a name that references the show Yakyukyo no Uta, but this time it's a name that I can pronounce with confidence. I don't know if it's SEO friendly, and also I don't care. Considering my follow account, you probably didn't notice that I no longer have an affiliated Twitter account. My Musk-era Twitter experience was really unpleasant, so I decided to delete my account entirely. If you're curious to read any of my thoughts in a short-form blog format, you can read them on Tumblr at Yuki Submarino. I will link below. I'm new to Tumblr and don't know if I like it better than Twitter, so I'll share a few thoughts. 1. I like Tumblr's text-generating format a lot more than Twitter's. 2. My taste in anime generally aligns better with the Tumblr hive mind than either the Twitter or the Reddit hive mind. But I've also noticed that Tumblr seems to choose just one anime every season to obsess over, and I haven't quite aligned myself with those anime in each of the past 2 seasons that I have been on Tumblr. No shade to Bocchi the Rock or Buddy Daddy, as I may just be too old or too male. 3, I find that I'm spending a lot less time on Tumblr than I did on Twitter, which in the macro is probably a good thing. But it also might mean that I'm not enjoying it as much, so we'll see if I stick with it. One last thing I'd like to share, I was a little more active in the past few months than I have been in the past few years with video uploads. Most of that is due to my previously mentioned unemployment, and I'm hoping to make some moves in the coming weeks that will render that moot. But if I can't find employment, you'll probably be seeing a similar output of videos as you've been seeing the past few months. It helps that Mix is starting up again. I will have many opinions about Mix, and that's all I got, so happy spring, everyone, and enjoy the baseball season.